Welcome to Screw the Commute, the entrepreneurial podcast dedicated to getting you out of the car and into the money. With your host, lifelong entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Tom Antion.
Hey everybody, it's Tom here with episode 42 of Screw the Commute podcast. I've got a really brilliant guy here today. His name is Mitch Davis. I've known him 300 years. And I mean, he's such a genius. I can't understand him half the time. So I asked him to dumb it down so we could keep up with him on this episode. I hope everybody didn't miss episode 41. That's Pete Anderson. He's a multiple senior gold medalist in swimming and the inventor of the new science of swimming. He's also a guy who saved my life by teaching me all the things I was screwing up when trying to swim. Now, our sponsor for this episode is How to Be a Kick-Butt Publicity Hound, and that's apropos for this topic we're going to talk about today. I've been on radio and TV all over the world, and this ebook tells you how you can do it too. I collaborated with Joan Stewart, the Publicity Hound, who included an even bigger perspective that will work for just about anyone who wants free publicity. And our guest today is also talked about in this book. So you can get a free excerpt and a table of contents by stopping by the show notes for this episode. It's 42. That would be at screwthecommute.com/42. All right, let's get to the main event. Mitch Davis runs expertclick.com, the expert referral site, and his news release wire is where his clients get success from those two entities. He pushes their news releases out 10 ways to news media and creates a great search engine optimization footprint for them. Mitch, are you ready to screw the commute?
Screw the commute. Absolutely.
You live in a city where they're used to screwing, aren't you? Washington, D.C., right?
Well, you never know who's going to do screw who
exactly
in this city.
Right.
So
and they could,
but I used to have an office and drive in and staff at 12, and oh my God, it was brutal. And then I downsized and I took it home, and I'm so much happier doing the pajama.
Well, yeah, I used to live up there, and that was 16 years ago, and the traffic was brutal. And now, it's rush hour like every minute of the day, 24/7, right?
It never ends. And now they've got tolls on the highways. And if you go the wrong way, it's going to be a $50 toll on I-66.
Oh my God.
They're going to cut 270 into a tollway pretty soon. It's just so much tougher.
Yeah, and any major city is like this. It's just you're wasting your life away in the cars, and that's how this came about.
But you don't waste your life away in the
car. Not if you're listening
and
studying.
They're not listening to Tom.
Right, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, you got to make use of it, but you are in more danger. I'd rather you listen to it while they're working out at the gym or something. But gee whiz, I'm so happy to be out of that mess. And of course, I've never had a job since a little bit in high school and college. So I tell people you could live an extra lifetime if you weren't commuting back and forth to work and putting up with all the BS all the time. So I've known you for a long time, Mitch, but tell everybody what you do.
We connect experts with journalists. The New York Times called us Dial an Expert. We go all the way back to doing a printed directory, which is like a yellow pages. Now it's a website, and the people that succeed with us are the people that put out content, either sending news releases or having us syndicate their blogs.
I think in your introduction it said something about you put it out to 10 different places. What's that mean?
When people give us a news release, we're able to pick up that news release, push it to Google News, push it to Bing News, push it to Yahoo News, push it to LexisNexis, pull it into their profile, pull it into the front page of the ExpertClick site, show it on their topics, the topic search on their profile, and it makes sure it gets picked up in regular Google search on your keywords. Yeah. The whole process is getting people found.
And I can't really remember, but not everybody can get into Google News, right?
No, you have to meet the news guidelines and have current content and have things that are newsworthy and have things that are fresh. So for instance, we don't pick up and push our re-syndicated blog posts into Google News. We only push new content, the news releases people give us into Google News, because Google has a standard that anything new Google News has
Right.
to be
Yeah,
new,
that's be
fresh.
news. Well, Mitch, I know you've been doing this a long time, but did you ever have a job?
Well, the first job I got out of college was to work for a company that was doing this, and then they failed, and then I waited tables and sold carpet and did all those bullshit things. I even worked in a gold and silver store. Boy, did I learn about
Yeah.
selling there. But then after 2 years thinking about what went wrong with the old broadcast interview connection that I was supposed to work for, I started Broadcast Interview Source and just changed a few very basic things and made it
Yeah,
work.
and that's been how long now?
1984. This is our 35th annual yearbook of experts we're
Wow,
working
and
on.
that they George Orwell predicted you were coming too.
Yeah, well, who knows?
1984.
Who knows?
So at the time, can you recall what it was like to say, "Okay, I'm tired of these jobs going nowhere"? Did you just quit the jobs and start the business, or did you transition, or do both part time? How'd you make the transition?
It took 3 years of work, still waiting tables part
Mm-hmm.
time at night. I was doing this in the daytime. It took a risk of $4,000 for the first general mailing to get people to find out
Right.
about this. I sent out the mailing. I got 64 people buying the $100 package, and that gave me $6,400 for the first year's revenue of this
Yeah,
business.
and that was that 30 some years ago. That was a big risk, waiting tables and saving up $4,000. I mean, that was quite a sacrifice for you.
Oh yeah, it was a risk, but I sort of had this premonition, maybe this will work, and I had to put enough into it to make
Mm-hmm.
it work. And I did it in the middle of I timed it wrong though, that I started the business in the middle of July.
And why would that be bad timing for this kind of business now that you look back?
Because I've learned in this business that everything happens in October.
Right.
That's when people start to think about doing something new. That's when people are back from the beach. I sent my first mailing at the same time Ronald Reagan was in San Diego getting renominated to be president of the United States of
Yeah.
America, and nobody in Washington was there. I just had no clue that I should have waited for 2 months before I did the
Yeah,
mailing.
and what's funny is that there's periods like this during the year. Like for my business, people go brain dead from the day before Thanksgiving till 2 weeks after Christmas. I don't do anything nearly like I do in September and October. So you do have to pay attention to that if you have a business. Really think that's a good point for people to think that through. Is when do you start your business? Sometimes it wouldn't matter, but it sure did for you.
Well, if you a lot of business, there's a book called Seasons of Businesses that I've seen. It's an old book, and it talks about how every business has a different season.
Mm-hmm.
Like people adopt puppies in December. They don't adopt puppies in July. There's different seasons when things happen.
Yeah, and then they dump them at the pound on after 2 weeks after Christmas. That's the problem.
Well, they and the big search on Google is pet urine in January when they're
Yeah.
peeing on the rug. So yeah. So you have to go to Google Trends and see when people are searching for the things you do and be there time wise, year wise with when they're doing something.
Yeah, so you can plan and give yourself the best chance of success in your business, and if you can make enough to carry you through the down times, then you're ready for the big times. So, give us a couple tips on how people could get ready to use a service like yours.
Well, to get ready to use a service like mine, you've got to think what we call the pyramid. And the pyramid is if you're sending stuff out to get you action and get you coverage and get you picked up, what are you doing with the leads that come back to you?
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to convert the person interested in what you have to become a customer? And I'm not talking you've got a freemium thing and you're hoping the people come back to you and convert to be free because maybe some of them will upgrade to be paid. And that's the freemium model. And some people start these internet businesses with the freemium model saying, well, if 95% of the people take the free thing, then 5% of the people will pay, but you'll spin your wheels on the 95% of the people that won't pay. So what are you doing to actually bring back a customer from publicity? Because if you're going to do PR, you've got to figure out how do you sell that lead that comes back to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bottom line. Because if you aren't selling them something or getting them into your pipeline where they're going to be upgraded from the basic by buying a download to buying a book to becoming a member to joining your coaching program, you've got to have that whole sales funnel ready and understand your sales funnel. Otherwise, all that PR in the world you're going to do is going to be worthless.
Yeah, I mean, I've known plenty of people that have been on Oprah and didn't make a nickel, other than bragging rights, which you can't pay the bills with bragging rights.
Yeah, I got a lady in Oprah, and I called her back the second year to say, you want to renew your membership? And she says, why? I've been on Oprah.
Yeah, you should say, well, how much money did you make? And then she would have hung up again.
Well,
So,
but sometimes there is that phenomena where the publicity works out not the way you're thinking about it, where something happens. Like I had a woman who was the makeover madam. She was somebody that helped people do makeovers.
mm-hmm.
So I call her a year later and says, do you want to renew? She says, no, I don't want to renew. I got so much business out of that thing. The Elizabeth Arden is flying me every Monday to one of their salons and somewhere in the country. I'm doing training on makeovers and I'm flying back on Friday afternoon. I don't have time for you.
You're too successful, Mitch. You see, that's your problem.
No, but who would have ever expected she would have gotten picked up by Elizabeth Arden because of being in my yearbook of experts?
Well, yeah, I mean, but you have to stick your face out there. I got my biggest thing ever was the spokesperson for CBS where, some lady was on my email subscriber list. I had 150,000 people. She just happened to be a columnist for the Miami Sun Sentinel. And somebody asked her a question about internet stuff. She called me up. I gave her the answer, just put a little blurb in her column. CBS saw that, called me up, and I got $100,000 contract out of it. So
yeah, you never know.
Yeah, you got to keep your face out there, and you never know how good. And even a lot of the little ones add up to big ones. That's the concept of the long tail. A lot of little things can add up to some big things.
Well, it's also the hopscotch where one little thing leads to another little thing leads to another bigger thing.
Yeah.
And the way talk radio will lead to a magazine will lead to a newspaper will lead to television, that type of thing. Exactly.
Yeah. So you handle a wide range of type of people, right?
I'm sometimes flat out amazed. I'll have both sides on a topic, and I'll be going, well, how do you feel about it, Mitch? And I'm going, well, I just love that topic. But yeah, there's a cornucopia.
Well, that's not your job to pick, what side, right? You're just to get them publicity. In fact, the TV stations live on people arguing like crazy on two sides of a topic. That's how they make their money.
Well, there used to be the fairness doctrine where they had to have both sides.
Oh, that's gone out the window.
That's gone out the window.
Well, they have both sides, but one side is going to gang up and kill the other side on air, So
well, yeah, and sometimes the other side isn't really obvious.
Ah, that's right.
Like right now, everybody is pro-marijuana, but there are very few anti-marijuana groups.
Yeah, which is a switcheroo from before.
Yeah, which is totally a switcheroo. Yeah. And we've been able to track down a couple of people on both sides, so I have both sides of the issue. But sometimes the sides don't want to talk to each other. They're so polarly opposite. And the other thing I'm seeing these days is there's a lot of messaging where people want their messages to be put out there, but they don't actually want to communicate.
Absolutely.
Which frustrates me. It says, don't these people want to be accessible? Don't these people want to have some ability that they will take a question or answer? How many times have you been to a website, gone to contact us, and found there is no contact us?
Yeah, they don't want to talk to you. They want the feet up at the beach and as much money as possible with the least amount of service.
Yeah, you're right. And the people who will talk to you are the ones that will actually have some expertise and maybe will lead you to other people. Because one of the biggest indicators I know of a really good guest is the guest who says, I know this subject cold, and I can introduce you to everybody in the industry.
Yeah, and journalists love that. Exactly. They love that. And even if you don't get picked for a certain thing, they still come back to you all the time because you're a good resource.
Exactly.
So you can't just take all the time.
No.
So have you ever gotten screwed in business?
Screwed in business. You mean the people that take their listings and never pay me?
Oh, that's one one way to get screwed.
Well, that's not that big an issue. I sort of always took it sort of like shoplifting, that you had to have a little bit of that level that people could buy and then want to get billed and not pay you, and because in the long run, my business is based on renewals, not the first time customer.
Mm-hmm.
So getting somebody in the system and proving it's more important to me than that first initial. But now I get a credit card. Now it's all credit cards up front, so it all works for me.
Yeah. All right, good.
But
good.
yeah, but we have I been screwed? Yeah, there's a guy named Alan Abel. You can look him up. Alanabel. He's a hoaxer. Okay, and he creates these media hoaxes. And one hoax he put in our system once was the School for Beggars, which was a hoax about people who he trained to be more effective beggars. Okay? And that was back when I took free listings and didn't screen my people.
Okay.
But now I'm much more careful about screening people.
All right,
but
so
you look at Alan Abel, you'll see a lot of good media hoaxes he's done.
So he didn't really technically he screwed you, but he pulled off a good media scam. Yeah.
He screwed the
media.
The media when the media wrote big stories about him, and I was just a facilitator.
Yeah, there was some other people that some guy was a chef or some, I don't know. There was been lots of them. There was one not too long ago. I saw the guy was I think he was claiming to pay people to go protest, $2,500 a person to go to protest, and he got on all the major media. He was a big hoax. So, Mitch, what do you like best about working for yourself, and what's the worst part about working for yourself?
The best part is I make my own goals. I make my own commitments. I've got my own time frame. I like that I no longer have to worry about personnel and hiring and all that grief. You know, I finally found vendors in the United Kingdom and India that do all my work for me, so I'm very happy with my vendors.
Mm-hmm.
I do miss the camaraderie of the office. I miss sometimes all the travel where we were endlessly going to trade shows,
Right.
endlessly traveling. And
That's the
it
only
was
place
just
I ever
brutal.
saw you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did so many trade shows for so many years. And finally they got to a point where people could buy it on the internet. So why are they going to buy it at the trade show?
Mm-hmm.
So I killed the trade shows. I came back and I just downsized.
Well, that saves a lot of money because those things are expensive to go to with travel, and nowadays travel is such a nightmare. Yeah, did you hear on the news the other day they're reducing the size of the airline bathrooms, so you and I cannot go to the bathroom anymore unless we do it in our seat.
Well, you know, but Tom, I lost a bunch of weight and I feel so much better. I feel like I got an upgrade to business class every time I fly.
Well, yeah, I did too. I lost 100 pounds since the last time you saw me, but still, we're tall. And
we're tall, yeah.
They're
exactly.
reducing the size of the bathrooms, and they claim it's going to get one more seat that's going to make them $400,000 a year more for reducing the size of the bathroom. But I think they're going to eat all that up and clean in the seats when people.
But Tom, you and I used to fly a lot.
A lot,
okay?
yeah.
I remember I used to fly to get I'd make extra trips and do those mileage runs to keep my status with United going. You remember all that stuff, right?
I haven't done that for a year at least.
Yeah, but I haven't done that since they changed all the rules.
Mm-hmm.
But you know that used to be a big drill for me, going to Korea or going to the Philippines just to drive up the miles.
Not me anymore. I watch it on TV all the time, nightmare after nightmare. I mean, they sent this, and you know, I love dogs. And so they took this dog was supposed to go from like, I don't know, Cincinnati to Cleveland, and ends up in Japan.
Well, they sent a charter plane to bring that dog back.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then, the one dog they killed, they forced this family to put it in the overhead bin and kill the puppy, you know? So anyway, it's crazy out there. So I'm so happy to be sitting home and doing all this stuff. You got to pay me a lot of money to get me out of this chair.
Well, you still go out and speak though, right, Tom?
Well, not as much because there's so many scammers at these conventions anymore. I don't want to go. And then a lot of them don't want me because I take home all the money. So I haven't been speaking as much anymore.
What are you doing with your scam thing? You were doing the scam.
Yeah, I have a scambrigade.com, and it's a Hollywood production company has made up a complete sizzle reel, and they're pitching it to the networks. But they said pretty much, we love this show, Tom, but don't quit your day job. Typical.
Don't quit your day job.
But
that's the risk we all take with the Screw the Commute. If we don't say to ourselves, I'm going to take 15% of my time, 15% of my money, and risk it on something that might pay off, we'll still be there working salaryman jobs forever.
That's for sure.
And that's what people who listen to Screw the Commute have to think about. They got to always be thinking about some new thing they've got that's on the side they can push with. Like I've got a new thing I'm working on called the Trade Show Council. And I've built the website, and I've got some content going. I've got some news releases on it. And it's something I want to build out and promote this fall. But I'm not doing it very quickly. I'm doing it slowly because one has to think their way through these things and find the people who are interested. And it is very much my anti-exhibiting thing because I started the Exhibitors' Rights Council, which talks about everything exhibitors are getting screwed when they go to trade shows.
Oh, exactly. Right.
That's my 15% right now. And everybody's got to have that 15% thing they're doing on the side, even if they got a main thing.
That's great advice because you never know which one's going to turn into the 100% one if you don't try.
No, you don't. And you never know when that item of serendipity is going to come around and suddenly there's going to be that reason for people to be part of something or that idea kicks off.
That's for sure.
That's the whole key to any one of these ideas. And that's why I continue to use my platform to promote my events and why the people that use Expert Click are getting out of the sandbox.
Now,
and yeah, I see people use I see many of my advertisers use Expert Click for 6 months, okay? And they come in, they do some new campaign, I get them some traction, I get them out of the Google sandbox, they get their press releases on it, and then I said, well, why aren't you still doing that? They said, well, I'm doing something else now. A lot of people I know are these serial entrepreneurs that will give something so much runway. And I think a lot of people in this Screw the Commute business don't realize how much runway you have to give something.
Yeah, they quit too soon, or they're just idea dreamer. I call them dreamers. They got ideas all over the place.
You've got these ideas, but the whole point of a runway is how much time you're going to give something. You've got to define what's the first sale. What can you do to get somebody interested in giving you money for something you have? That's where your runway is. That's the barrier to getting your plane off the ground. And if you don't understand what it's going to take to get that plane off the ground, what's it going to be? It's not going to be like I'm interested in going cruising, so I set up a cruising society and a Twitter feed, and I have all these followers and I have all this stuff. But I'm not seeing any ability to get that to take off because there's no ability. So what's my runway on that? It's got a big, long runway because all I'm doing is paying for a domain and a Twitter account. So I can keep that going for a long time. But you've got to look at things that are going to somehow create a paid revenue. That's where your runway is. I think a lot of people start doing things. Hell, I know I'll do things for a while thinking it's a great idea, but then where's the revenue? I don't know where the revenue is right now on my trade show council. I know that if I can get people interested in following me, I can get more people wanting my stuff and put content there. But how am I going to get paid members? What benefit do I give the paid member to generate their coming in? So I've done 6 weeks of work to build something there, but I don't have really the announcement of where's my runway, so I'm not putting any money into it because where's the cash?
Yeah, and it's good for most people. I mean, you're pretty much set, but for most people just starting out, you have to think those things out before you go down and spend a lot of time and money. I mean, people like Mitch and I can do stuff on a whim and see how it goes. And it's not going to change our lifestyle. But if you're counting on money coming in, you better think that stuff out before you spend 6 months or a year on something that's just might be interesting to you. But if it's not interesting to anybody else, you lose. Hey, Mitch,
you've got to define who the buyer's going to be.
Yeah. So tell them a little bit about joining Expert Click. What can they expect if they decide to get your help?
With Expert Click, they get a press room. They can pick up their LinkedIn. They can pick up their Twitter feed. Can pick up their Facebook blogs. They can put all their social media into one place. They can send news releases we push to Google so they can get found by the search engines. They can take an idea, which might be their startup business, might be their regular business, and get more followers and more finding on their topics. They can drive interviews from radio, TV, looking for what they have. The whole point is it's search engine optimization and being there when people want to find you. And it's really easy to join. Just go to expertclick.com/discount/Tom Antion to save $100 on the annual membership.
And we're going to have that in the show notes for them. So all they have to do is click on it. Or
just go to expertclick.com, join, and put Tom's name in the special offer box. That's the easy way to do it.
Either way. Yes, and I've been a member for a long, long time, back when you had the paper book that came out. It was like a phone.
You joined when you were Prank Masters.
Yeah, when I had the Practical Joke Company in D.C., that's for sure. I was on Washington Times, Washington Post, Associated Press, and went worldwide.
Yeah, well, that was an interesting business.
Yeah.
I was always amazed how you never got sued in that business, but I guess you were just a nice guy.
Well, it was, we didn't do anything mean-spirited. It was all by your friends. If I saw something that was mean-spirited, I would not do it. But I did get threatened one time. I got thrown out of a Jewish Seder one time. Because I came from Hicksville, USA, and there wasn't a Jewish person within 300 miles of me, and so I got duped into kind of like the Alan Abel thing, except I was standing there getting thrown out. So, Mitch, we got to take a brief break for our sponsor, and then when we come back, we're going to have Mitch tell us what a typical day is like for him and how he stays motivated. Folks, free publicity, and that's what we're talking about today with Mitch's service, can skyrocket your business. I started my entire career in what I call media marketing. I got clients that call me by being interviewed on radio and TV and in print. How I did it and how you can do it too is in this ebook, How to Be a Kick-Butt Publicity Hound. So get a free excerpt and the entire table of contents at screwthecommute.com/42. That's today's episode show notes, screwthecommute.com/42. And let's get back to the main event. Mitch, tell us what a typical day is like for you and how you stay motivated.
How I stay motivated, it's real easy. I don't have the pain in the ass of employees that I have to motivate. I can motivate myself. I pull up my CRM to see what am I doing today, what's the hot topic.
Tell them what CRM means.
A customer relationship management system.
There you go.
I used to use Salesforce, and I said, why am I paying for this? Now I use HubSpot.
Okay, right.
And it tells you who you're supposed to talk to, reminds you who who you should talk to in September, who's going to call you back when.
And what you said. It reminds you can make notes of what you talked about, too.
What you said, and you can remind yourself that this guy you talked to a month ago said, call me in the middle of July.
Mm-hmm.
So you're able to go back to him and email him from the platform and then call him from the middle of July saying, hey, we spoke back in June. You said you were ready for this now. We're ready for you now. And here's what's coming up on this.
Beautiful.
And it's so much easier than trying to do it with scraps of paper. And it means that I'm able to keep track of who's where and how they're working it.
Yep.
So that's one way I keep motivated. The other way is I got all these regular accounts. I have these monthly and annual accounts that I need to run their credit cards. And, these people come to me and say, we have this whole automated credit card system. And, Tom, I like running people's credit cards.
I know the feeling.
There's this certain satisfaction of getting out the file, keying in the number, and seeing judging, and you're taking care of people. And I spend a lot of time looking at my clients' accounts and figuring out which ones are worthy of featuring in my email news wire I send to talk radio, because talk radio is still one of the big buyers and users of our people.
Well, yeah. And do you have any plans of putting major podcasts in your list of people to submit to?
Well, I know that talk radio is more aggressive in picking these things up. You can go after podcasts, but so many podcasts don't go anywhere.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying some of the big ones do.
Some of the big ones do. You're right, and you can go through like Cision and go after people. But one of the things you got to do is try to have the focus of them finding you. That's our biggest thing, is having the news releases so that our experts are found when people are searching for them.
Yeah, and see, the podcast need a lot of guests, so I'm thinking that could be a future. And also, one of the reasons I got into it is because GM announced that they're going to have their Cars podcast ready, and that the podcast listenership, there was a big study just done that said that it's exceeded satellite radio listenership because it's free. So there's a lot of people out there listening to this stuff now.
Well, talk radio now calls itself spoken word media.
They're reinventing themselves, right?
Well, they are reinventing themselves, because talk radio. I've been hanging around talk radio for 35 years. Michael Harrison and Talkers.com is the Bible industry, and they keep talking about it as spoken word. So many of the broadcasters are now doing podcasting because they know that's the value of getting found when people want to listen to them, not being forced to listen to them.
Yeah, it's on demand. And now I heard some of the podcast companies were kind of like hated at NAB, National Association of Broadcasters, because a lot of these people were, going towards podcasting instead of paying a fortune for broadcast radio. And so it's hurting their revenue.
You look at some of the things like Voice America has lots and lots of podcasts, okay? And the podcast industry is in many ways coming out of being a scam. And the scam always was, we'll sell these people the ability to have a podcast, we'll charge them so much for the production, so much of this, and have them try to get their own listeners. And some podcasts have grown out of that and have enough listeners, but there's some podcasts that are still on this, getting weaned and ripped off by the people who are running the podcast systems.
Yeah. So yeah, I did put this all together myself, basically, because now you can, and you just read a book on it and I got some help with the equipment, but I'm going to podcast around. I'm doing it right now, basically. So yeah, you don't have to spend a fortune to get into this, but you do have to do it right and have good guests and good quality information to get listenership.
And being on Tim Ferriss's podcast is there are some really big podcasts that are of great value. But one of the things we got to remember is a lot of these podcasts, just like this one, are affiliate based, where I'm not really editorial, I'm advertorial.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And, we have to make that obvious nowadays with the,
you have to make that obvious that this advertorial, that this guest is really a sponsor. And that's where this comes from. And I think a lot of people begin to listen to podcasts and don't realize that. And then there's this moment when they realize, oh my gosh, this really is this person promoting themselves being on my program. And the producer of the podcast is making revenue from the person doing this in some direct fashion. Now, that's fine if everybody realizes it, and that's why good reason to be in the podcast business. But it's not the old classic radio.
Yeah, even though the same thing was happening, technically a sponsor was, or Coca-Cola was paying for that advertisement, so it's just not as obvious. Because it was obvious it was an ad rather than
but when
editorial.
Howard Stern had a guest on, the guest wasn't reimbursing Howard Stern through an affiliate program.
Right, exactly, right.
That was the difference.
But I'll tell you what, it's working. It's working like crazy.
Oh, yeah. And that's why people should be, even if they're thinking about being a business, they can think about being a podcast.
Well, it can be an addition to your business. So it's not my only business for sure, but it's an adjunct to it that you can do right from anywhere that you got a quiet room.
And you can use my ExpertClick system to promote the podcasts, to host the podcasts, to get the word out about the podcast and to find people to be guests on your podcasts.
Yeah, that's exactly
So
right.
I've got the entire system waiting for you to run your podcast right through our system. And even if you're just looking for guests, go to the Expert Click system. You can find the guests.
Yeah, that's part of what you do is help people find guests.
Yeah.
It's just, you don't care if they're on a podcast as long as they're happy, right?
You're right. You're right. That the whole point is you never know exactly what the equation is that's going to satisfy people being found. But when they're found, there's business in there. And the other part about being available is information comes to you. People come to you to ask you a question. And you'll be thinking, well, I never thought of that question. That's a good business opportunity. I had people come to me asking me questions, and that's how I got into the domain name business, by having somebody come to me saying, "What's this going on?" When your ears to the rail, you hear things. You aren't just stuck off being nothing. And one of the biggest ways to gain value is to decide to do a podcast and interview luminaries in your field.
Mm-hmm.
And the luminary in your field will do the podcast interview, and you'll be able to pick their brains, and you'll be able to associate yourself with that expert. And it's so easy to become a podcast person. Voice America can do it. We actually played with this. We have something called Expert Radio that we built. And I've never really promoted it, but Tom, you might get me thinking about doing Expert Radio, because we built Expert Radio to be in the podcast business.
Well, like I said, you've known me for a lot of years, and I used to poo-poo podcasts, but now, I would not be doing this if it wasn't very lucrative, and because I just don't have the time. I got plenty of revenue sources, but it's worth it because you can reach a whole new audience of people that wouldn't sit down for a webinar and wouldn't read your long sales letter, but they will listen to podcasts and get excited about you and what you have to offer while they're doing something else.
And they will associate you with the expert you're interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the big things, Tom, you can do with your podcasts is reach out to the brand name people you know that you want to be associated with and interview them.
Well, I just did. I got the biggest guy on the earth today.
Yeah, me. I know exactly. But I'm saying that's one of the big reasons to do a podcast. And for somebody thinking about Screw the Commute, a podcast is an easy way to get into business and get your ear to the ground.
And you know what? You can keep your regular job. You could record in the middle of if you're recording just yourself in the middle of the night, but you can work interviews in a short period of time at somebody else's schedule or on the weekends
or whatever. You can do the interviews every Saturday at noon.
There you go.
Put your program up Saturday at noon on the net. Be with Voice America or one of the other hosts like that. It's very easy to do. It's a great way to start your business, start your ideas. And yeah, you really can't charge the guests to be on your program, but there are people that do that.
Yes, that's another revenue model for really big shows, for sure.
Yeah, and not even big shows. It's just part of the process. That's one of the revenue models we built Expert Radio on.
Mm-hmm.
It is if an Expert Radio, I can have a host do a 30-minute interview with you and get the audio up, get your whole interview going, and voila. But we said that it really wasn't our primary focus. But now you're getting me to think about that again, Tom.
Yeah.
So I got to go to Expert Radio and do it. Do you want to pay to be on one of my programs?
Maybe you should hold your breath on that one. But anyway, Mitch, it's so great talking to you, catching up with you, and I want everybody to check the show notes to get that discount link for you, and Joe, check out all Mitch's services. I mean, 35 years in business, starting as a waiter. This guy is the real deal. And don't forget to check out the How to Be a Kick Butt Publicity Hound, so you can see lots of different ways to get publicity, and get yourself a membership at Expert Click. And this has been episode 42. But any closing thoughts for all these screwballs we got listening to this, Mitch?
Do something. Do anything. I think Franklin Delano Roosevelt said it during the recession. Just try something. You've got to put one foot in front of the other and begin something. And maybe if all you do is start doing a podcast about your idea and interviewing the people that are smart on your idea, something will come of it from you. That's all it's about, is go out there and start something. And if this thing you start is a podcast on your topic, do it.
Great advice. Do something, that's for sure. So anyway, folks, this has been episode 42 with Mitch Davis from Expert Click. Make sure you subscribe over at iTunes for us and leave us a review, and we'll catch you on the next episode.